Hello class, welcome to Unit 8, Video 8. Today we're going to look at solving radical equations and inequalities. Your learning targets for today are that you can solve equations containing radicals as well as inequalities. So we're going to be looking at both today. Our first example says computer chips are found from the element silicon, which is found in sand. Suppose a company that manufactures computer chips uses the formula that is given to estimate the cost in dollars of producing N chips. What would the cost be to produce 27,000 chips? Okay, so we are looking at the number of chips. So we have C and N. N is the number of chips and C is the cost, so we're going to plug it in for N. So we have C is equal to 10 times 27,000 to the 1/3 plus 1,500. Okay, so we're going to solve this to see what our cost would be. We know the cubed root of 27 is 3. So the cubed root of 27,000 would be 30, because 30 times 30 times 30 will give us the 27, and then we'd add the 3 zeros on. So it's 10 times 30 plus $1,500. 10 times 30 is 300 plus 1,500. So our cost for producing the 27,000 chips would be $1,800. Okay, so this equation was pretty nice. We just had N and we plugged things in and we solved. Now we're going to look at how to solve things if I wanted to solve for N and I knew C, or vice versa, solving problems that involve radicals. So example 1 says solve each equation. It's very similar to when you solved absolute value equations. You need to first get the radical all by itself, and after you do that, then you would square both sides to get rid of the radical. Okay, but you have to have the radical all by itself. So I have plus 2 here, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides. So then I have the square root of x plus 1 is equal to 4 minus 2 is 2. Now I can go ahead and square both sides to get rid of that radical. So I have x plus 1 equals 4. And now you solve it from here. I would subtract 1 from both sides, so I have x is equal to 3. Now you should always check your answer. Does it work? Okay. If I plug in 3, 3 plus 1 is 4. Okay. We want to know, does all this equal 4? So this is the square root of 4 plus 2. Does that equal 4? Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 2, does that equal 4? Yes. So that answer works. Okay, so we know that one works. Let's go ahead and move on to the next example. Okay, this one is example 2. It's a little bit different. If you look on the left-hand side, I have my square root by itself, and if I look on the right-hand side, I have 3 minus the square root of x. I will not be able to get this this radical all by itself. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and square both sides and start simplifying from there. It does require a little bit more work. So my square will cancel, so I have x minus 15 equals, now x minus the square root of 3 squared is really 3 minus the square root of x times 3 minus the square root of x. So I need to FOIL on the right-hand side. My left-hand side will remain x minus 15. When I FOIL, I will get 9 minus 3 times the square root of x minus 3 times the square root of x. Negative times negative will be plus square root of x squared. So let's simplify because that got a little messy. So we have x minus 15 is equal to 9 minus 6 square root of x, and then those cancel, so plus x. Now I need to go ahead and solve from here. I would notice that if I subtract x from both sides, they will cancel. So what I have is negative 15 is equal to 9 minus 6 square root of x. From here, I would subtract 9. Negative 15 minus 9 is negative 24. Negative 24 is equal to negative 6 square root of x. Then I would go ahead and divide by negative 6. Negative 24 divided by negative 6 is positive 4 is equal to the square root of x. And now I would square both sides again to get x by itself. So x is equal to 16. Then I should always go ahead and check to make sure my answer will work. So if I check this one, We're saying x is equal to 16. So I have the square root of 16 minus 15. And I want to know, does that equal 3 minus the square root of 16? This gives me the square root of 1. This gives me 3 minus 4. Does 1 equal negative 1? No, it does not. So my answer is not x equals 16. There is actually no solution for this one. So make sure you are checking your answers to make sure they work, because you would hate to put down an answer that is incorrect. Okay, so this one is a no solution. Let's go ahead and look at example 3. This one is very similar to our example 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and add 1 to both sides. Now I have the radical of x minus 2 equals 6. Now my radical is by itself. Square both sides. I have x minus 2 is equal to 36. I would add 2 and I get x is equal to 38. Let's plug it in and check. 38 minus 2 is 36. The square root of 36 is 6. 6 minus 1 is 5, so this answer works. So there is my answer for example 3. Let's go ahead and look at a little bit more complex one. This isn't a square root, this is a cubed root. Okay, so the first thing is I still want to get this piece with my cube root by itself. So I am going to go ahead and add 2 to both sides. So I have 3, 5n minus 1 to the 1/3 is equal to 2. Still have to get this piece by itself, so it's 3 times this, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I have 5n minus 1 to the 1/3 is equal to 2/3. Now, remember the square root of x is really equal to x to the 1/2. And to undo it, you take it and square it. So in order to undo something to the 1/3, you're going to take it to the 3rd power. 1/3 times 3 is 1, so now I have it to the 1st power. So I have 5n minus 1 is equal to, then it's 2 to the 3rd, which is 8, over 3 to the 3rd, which is 27. Then I would go ahead and add 1 to the other side. So I have 5n. If I add 1, I'm just going to rewrite it. I would have 8 over 27 plus 27 over 27, so we can keep it as a fraction. So I have 5n is equal to 8 plus 27 is going to give me 35. So I have 35 over 27. Then I would go ahead and divide by 5 or multiply by 1/5. The reason I'm multiplying by 1/5 is because it's easier to compare my fractions. This will cancel, and n is equal to, what is 35 divided by 5? They're both divisible by 5, so this is 7 and 1, so it's 7 over 27. Okay. And if we wanted to check our answer, it's probably easiest just to plug this one into our calculator. So we have 3. I'm just going to do the cubed root. So cubed root of 5 times 7 divided by 27 minus 1. Oops, I want to keep that under my radical. Minus 1. Then minus 2. We want to see, does that equal 0? Yes, it does, so my answer works out. So n is equal to 7 over 27. All right, example 5. This one is a 4th root. So now we're going to do the same thing. Move 2 to the other side. So we have 2y plus 6 to the 4th root is equal to 2. Now, in order to get rid of a 3rd root or a square root, you would take it to that number's power. So this is to the 4th power. So I have 2y plus 6 is equal to 2 to the 4th, which is 16. I would subtract 6, so I have 2y is equal to 10. Y is equal to 5. And then I plug it in. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 6 is 16. The 4th root of 16 is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. Once again, if you wanted to, you could plug it into your calculator and check, but my answer is 5. Now we have example 6. This one's a cubed root. So I'm going to go ahead and get the cubed root piece all by itself. So I subtract 5. I have 3y plus 1 to the 1/3 is equal to negative 5. Then I'm going to take it to the 3rd power to cancel these. So I have 3y plus 1 is equal to negative 5 to the 3rd. So it's really negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5, which is negative 125. You could do that on your calculator if you needed to. subtract 1, so I have negative 126, and divide by 3. You get y is equal to negative 42. Let's try it out. Let's make sure it works. We would have the cubed root of 3 times negative 42 plus 5. Does that equal 0? Oh, plus 5. Plus 1, and then plus 5. I typed that in wrong, didn't I? Let's just adjust that. Okay, so if you ever need to, you can arrow up and make the change. So this one is plus 1 underneath the radical, and then plus 5. Let's see, does that work now? Yes, it does. So my answer is negative 42. All right, those are our equations. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to inequalities. Okay, so when we have our inequalities, we could have a compound inequality. So just make sure we keep taking everything into consideration. So the first thing you need to do is just solve it like a regular equation. Okay. Biggest thing with inequalities is if you multiply or divide by a negative, you need to flip the sign. So we're going to subtract 2. So we have the square root of 4x minus 4 is less than or equal to 6 minus 2 is 4. Then I would go ahead and square both sides. I have 4x minus 4 is less than or equal to 16. I would add 4 to the other side, and I have 4x is less than or equal to 20. Divide by 4. It's a positive, so my sign stays the same. So I have x is less than or equal to 5. Okay, that's the first part of inequalities. Okay, this is what we were talking about. The second thing is our domain. We found domain earlier in this chapter. It is what is underneath here must be greater than or equal to 0. Otherwise, you can't plug it in. So you still have to find the domain as well. Okay, so my domain, and I solve this. So I have 4x is greater than or equal to 4, so x is greater than or equal to 1. Then to see what my answer would be, let's just plot this. I have 1, x is greater than or equal to, so closed circle, going this way. Then we have x is less than or equal to 5. So here's 5, closed circle, less than's going this way. So my answer is where they both are, which is here and here and in between. So the way I can write my answer is 1 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 5. So this came from here and this came from there. So there is my answer for example 7. Let's go ahead and look at example 8. Remember, 2 steps. Solve it as is. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I have greater than or equal to 4. Then I would go ahead and square both sides. So I have 2x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 4 squared is 16. Minus this 2. I have 14, so x is greater than or equal to 7. Then I always have to check my domain, okay? Because you can't plug negatives into a radical. So we want to make sure we're not putting negatives, non-real solutions as part of our answer. We only want the positive. So it's what's underneath the radical has to be greater than or equal to 0. So I would subtract 2, so x is greater than or equal to negative 2, divide by 2, so x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Okay. Once again, let's look at this one. Negative 1 and 7, so x is greater than or equal to negative 1. X is greater than or equal to 7. So where are both my answers? They are here and onward. So my answer is just x is greater than or equal to 7. Okay, so there's my answer for example 8. If you have any questions, feel free to pause it and come and ask me if you're in the class. Otherwise, write them down. Otherwise, I would like for you to try 9 and 10 on your own. Okay, solve it as is, and then check the domain, and then come back and check your answers with mine. Number 9, we're going to solve each inequality. Don't forget, once again, when you multiply or divide by a negative, got to remember to flip that sign. So here, we would add 2 to the other side, so I have the square root of 4x minus 4 is less than 6. I would square both sides. So I have 4x minus 4 is less than 36. Adding 4, I would have 4x is less than 40. And then divide by 4, I have x is less than 10. So this is the first part. Then I always go ahead and check my domain. what is underneath my radical, 4x minus 4, must be greater than or equal to 0. So 4x must be greater than or equal to 4. X must be greater than or equal to 1. Let's see what this looks like. We have 1 and 10. X is less than 10, so open circle but less than 10. X is greater than or equal to 1, so closed circle but bigger. So your answer is where it's double. So closed circle, at 10 we have open circle and then in between. So I can just take these two and compile them together. It's 1 is less than or equal to x is less than 10. That's my final answer for example 9. Example 10, once again, start out, subtract 4 from both sides, so we have 3x minus 6, the square root of that is less than or equal to 3. Then I would square both sides. I have 3x minus 6 is less than or equal to 9. I would add 6 to the other side, and then x is less than or equal to 5. Part 2, check our domain. 3x minus 6 is greater than or equal to 0. So 3x is greater than or equal to 6. Divide by 3, so x is greater than or equal to 2. Looking at our answers here. X is less than or equal to 5. X is greater than or equal to 2. So as you can see, it's going to be these two put together. 2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 5. Okay. We have one last example, example 11. A ponderal index P is a measure of a person's body based on height h in meters. Okay, so height in meters, mass in kilograms. One such formula is given. Okay, a 70 kilogram person is 1.8 meters tall, has a ponderal index of 2.29. Okay, how much weight could the person gain and still have an index of at most 2.4? Okay, so we want our ponderal index to be less than or equal to 2.4. So let's just write that down. This is what we're trying to figure out. We want this to be at most, so less than or equal to 2.4. Okay, let's plug in what we know. The M is our mass in kilograms, but they're saying how much weight could they gain. So currently, they weigh 70 pounds, but they're going to gain a little more. So let's call it x, 70 plus x. All over their h, which is their height, 1.8 meters. Let's make sure height's in meters. Yes, it is. So I have 1.8 is less than or equal to 2.4. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and solve. First thing I got to do is get this by itself. So I'm going to multiply by 1.8 on both sides to get this to cancel. So I have the cubed root of 70 plus x is less than or equal to 2.8 times 1.8 is 4.32. To get rid of a cubed root, I would cube both sides. And I'm just going to leave this because it gets to be a really long decimal. So I have 70 plus x is less than or equal to 4.32 cubed. Then I would subtract 70 from both sides. So x is less than or equal to 4.32 cubed minus 70. So let's just figure out what that is on our calculator. Parentheses 4.32 to the third power. So to the third, make sure you arrow over to get out, minus 70. So my answer is 10 point, and I always round to 3 decimals, 6.2. This 5 tells me to round this up, so 2.622. So x is less than or equal to 10.622. So this means how much can they gain at most? At most, that person can gain 10.622, and this was talking about his weight, so in kilograms. Okay. That is the end of Unit 8, Video 8. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.